Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Thriving with your host, Naowshaba Ferdous. I am joined today by a very special guest, probably the most special guest I will ever have on the show. And now, how do we know each other? Well, she has known me longer than any other guest that will probably be on this show, except for maybe one other person, because she is my sister, Zanna Ferdous, and I will let her introduce herself here in a second. She has been such a trooper with the amount of videography and sound work we've been doing to put this episode together, because we have something really special to share with you guys today. As you can see from the title, it is "Why Do So Many Desi Kids End Up in Therapy?" And we'll explain what Desi means if you don't know what that is, but we applaud you for being on this episode anyway. But without further ado, I'm going to let my sister, Zanna Ferdous, tell us who she is and why she's here today. Thank you for being here, Zanna.
Thank you so much for having me. I am a resident in counseling, and that means basically I am working towards my counseling license to be a professional counselor, to be an LPC, any of the alphabet soup that you see out there at the end of people's names. That is one of the many titles that you can become to become a therapist in the state of Virginia. So I'm in that process, and it's going to take about 2 years. I'm about a fourth of the way done and a little bit more time to go, and I'll be ready to do something.
Yes, change the world.
Change the world, hopefully.
So let's get straight into the topic, guys. For those of you who don't know what Desi is, it is a term really just meant to describe folks from South Asia, not to be confused, Southeast Asia, but South Asia, as in countries like Bangladesh, which is where we are from, Pakistan, Nepal, India, of course, Sri Lanka. And so, yeah, that is really what Desi is, nothing crazy or complicated. And yeah, we have not a unique experience, but not necessarily that unique in that others can't relate to it. But we don't have the typical American experience because our parents came here from Bangladesh in the 80s. And so we have our entire lives, I'm sure Zanna will expand on this, have straddled two worlds, right? Whether we're not quite American enough, but we're also not quite Desi enough or immigrant enough, if you will. And we'll definitely be expanding on that today. So the reason I wanted to have my sister on this podcast episode is because she was recently sharing with me that some of her most recent patients have specifically come to her because they're South Asian and she's South Asian. And she was explaining, some nuances of how they felt so relieved and related to and comfortable because she looked like them and had certain lived experiences that they had and that she had that they could relate to. I thought that was really interesting as someone who has dabbled in and out of therapy myself. I can't say that I have ever had a therapist that looked like me per se, definitely no one that was South Asian. So that intrigued me. I thought that was really interesting. I wanted to have us sort of open up the conversation by talking about why do so many South Asian kids end up in therapy? From your perspective, that has been an influx of some of your clients who are South Asian. We have definitely been taught as South Asian kids that not necessarily intentionally, but that maybe therapy is a luxury, not a necessity, or that mental health issues aren't necessarily real or legitimate. Why do we see so many folks that do look like us who are first generation Americans? Why are they in therapy? What would you say to that?
It really does stem back from the fact that our parents immigrated here, coming from Bangladesh in the 80s, coming to a world where it was a land of opportunity. They were told, a land where things can happen, abandoning the family that the family that you've always known your entire life, and leaving to a completely different country, trying to find your community, trying to find connection, and landing in Queens, New York, finding one of the biggest, if probably the biggest population of Bangladeshi people outside of Bangladesh that there is, and that's where you would land. The problem with that is that it's New York City, and the challenges it takes to actually live in New York with 3 children, trying to support them, trying to support yourself, being able to balance all that and the financial struggles that go along with that. I mean, it takes a toll on, how much opportunity, I guess, you could have to expose your children to the cultural experiences that you want them to have. So when you say, straddling almost two different identities, us being born in Queens, New York, embracing what American culture was at that time, but then still being exposed in little bits and pieces, going to aunties and uncles' houses, dressing in traditional clothing,
Eating the food,
loving the food,
hearing some music.
right. And being able to be exposed in that way, but not, for some reason, not truly embracing it and thinking about it maybe us trying to figure out what we want and how it fits into our identity. We never really had these deeper conversations with our parents as they were busy trying to have a roof over our heads, trying to feed us, trying to make sure that we're supported with our basic needs. Culture and identity, of course, are important, but it made it seem like, oh, it's a part of you. What do we need to teach you? What do we need you to embrace? It is who you are. But really going to school and seeing that you're not able to find as many people who are in the same boat or in the same shoes as you are, straddling two identities, you mask yourself to fit into the crowd that you're in. You kind of change, the way you do things, what you like, what you're exposed to, because you want to fit in. You don't want to be ostracized. You want to be included.
What I find really interesting about what you said is that with our parents, and so for those of you who are not Bengali, you may notice us say Amwanapu, which I'm just going to go out and say that because I think that makes much more sense for us in our conversation to naturally flow to say Amwanapu. That means mom and dad. So when I reference my parents, I'm just going to say that. And for those of you who already know what that word means, I know you're going to feel right at home. So with Amwanapu, something that I noticed is that because they were so busy, like you said, keeping a roof over our heads, I think saying this out loud, it almost makes me think that's probably why mental health and sometimes even like you can even say like dental work. Sometimes like it's very like common in a lot of immigrant households is like sometimes mental health, dental work, physical therapy, other like extras, if you will, extras in health are afterthoughts. But the immediate needs of are they alive? Are their bones not broken? Are they not dying of pneumonia? Things a doctor can fix. Are those needs met? That's kind of that's sort of what I'm feeling like thinking, why maybe our mental health support was not supported, why that was not really prioritized.
I want to say I do think that part of South Asian culture is not relying, when we're not focusing upon mental health, we are relying upon the religion in order to
That's a good
help with alleviating our stress. Okay, if we can't, so you're depressed, you're anxious,
turn to religion.
turn to religion, turn to
God.
faith in some way, and all those things will disappear. All those things will subside. You will be okay. That was kind of I guess the message, and it wasn't just from our parents. It was from people in the community that we were connected to.
Yeah.
We were exposed to different groups of people, and that was kind of the same message that was given to us, as opposed to, hey, let me sit down and listen to what you have to say. Let me hear your struggles and give you that time to to vent, to tell me, to speak.
So that's interesting you say that because I think that requires a certain level of emotional intelligence, which we're going to get into that, guys, today, because we're going to be talking about the 3 levels of Desihood, or you can even say the 3 levels of maybe even immigranthood. Because I think, for me, you were saying something of like how we survived in school, just trying to fit in. I almost see the inverse of our parents. They were like, they knew that they weren't going to be American enough, so they did their best to fit in the ways they could. And so for us, the inverse is true, is that we knew we were never really going to be Bengali or immigrant enough, but we tried our best. We tried our best to integrate ourselves into the culture as much as we could, as much as our parents wanted us to. But I think the main priority for us was, how do I get along in school with American kids? And then theirs is, how do I get along in this country just enough so that I'm accepted? Like it's like a matter of acceptance, I think. But we will be talking a little bit about the emotional intelligence piece, guys, and why if you are a child of an immigrant as well, why you might feel like, yeah, I don't think my parents ever sat down and asked me, how are you? And, is everything okay? Whereas someone who maybe grew up in an American household may have had that. And maybe not too. I mean, that, it's not that we're not here to say that an immigrant household versus an American household, one is more perfect than the other. There's just some interesting nuances with mental health that affect us to be who we are today. And I think other first gen Americans, whether they're South Asian or not, can definitely relate to our episode. So, yeah, talk to me a little bit about why you have noticed some of your clients who are South Asian. Why do you think they're flocking to you? I mean, they really could choose anybody, right? They could choose another person of color. They could choose someone based on age, someone similar in age to them. Why do you think they're specifically going after you?
That is a really good question. I think that representation is so very important in every aspect of, I guess,
Life.
life in general, whether it comes to marketing, commercials, who you see on ads for clothing, who you can see. If you can see the person in front of you and there's some level of connection, you may be able to buy that product. You might want to do that thing. You think that if somebody is mayor, you might think that you will be able to become mayor. You will be able to go do those things. I mean, because the representation is
subtle Mamdani shout over here.
This is no fan, but
He's pretty cute.
From Virginia. So, just thinking about it in those terms, I think that really did play a role in what I wanted to achieve as a therapist, a future therapist, in training. I wanted to have or be able to be representing a group of people that I feel like is so underrepresented.
Yeah.
Just because South Asians and the Bangladeshi population and the South Asian populations don't talk about mental health doesn't mean that those mental health challenges do not exist.
Yeah, of course.
They're there. It's that we maybe want to be able to talk to somebody who might understand.
Yeah.
It's not even about, this person the person who's seeking a therapist has to find someone who's exactly like them. It's my worldview. It's my skin color. It's my understanding, the way that I was raised, the family dynamics,
Religious aspects,
different nuances that I am able to understand in a way that makes that person feel like they're connected. And connection is so important when it comes to wanting to be vulnerable. When you think about it, I can't tell you about the clients that I have, but really from my own perspective, trying to find a therapist post-COVID was very difficult. Yes, virtual options and telehealth made it accessible to anywhere in the world, but it's who do I want to open up to? It's already foreign to me opening up on a on the screen.
Yeah.
But on top of that, you're telling me that now I have to over explain myself about how my parents raised me, why they did this, why they told me this to someone who really truly is just so shocked, mind blown, or just like, wow, tell me more. Like, I'm a specimen, or I'm fascinating, and there's nothing really, uh, not fascinating, but it's something they've never heard before. I don't want to
abstract.
Yeah, exactly. And it could be from anything, family dynamics to how mental health is viewed, to how much you have to keep to yourself, leading a difficult
Trauma.
Yes, trauma.
What trauma looks like in our households versus an American household could be very different. How relationships are viewed, right? Like, I think a lot of folks who are watching who have immigrant parents, whether you're Arabic, African, Hispanic, there's a lot of, which we will get into, there's a lot of hiding. There's a lot of two identities that you're straddling, which we mentioned earlier. So with dating, you might tell your therapist something like, well, my parents have never met any of my boyfriends, and that's so foreign to them. Like, they would not understand. So
they would have to have you explain more.
And what does that even mean? And so, you haven't explained that more. I see why your clients who do look more like you and who are from our adjacent culture wants you, because the speed in which you get it is the time frame in which you get it. It's speedier. It's just faster.
The understanding is truly genuine.
Yes.
It doesn't, yes, of course, like I want to know the details. I want to know the nitty gritty, of course, but it's the true understanding of living it is what they're able to get. And I can't speak to them, but for myself, that's why it took so long to find a therapist that was able to understand who I am, understand my worldview, understand that this is what I'm coming with, and this is complex. It's not single layered. It's not double layered. It's multiple layers.
Just tell your parents to do it. And it's like, well, that's not so easy to do.
Right. Right.
I'm actually really happy that you went, and I'm proud of you for finding a therapist that you went through a few. And so I think that anyone listening who was like, I'm not going to find a therapist. The therapist doesn't have to look exactly like you if you're listening.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what some of your clients have gone and done because that was right for them and it was right for you. Just be super open. Like my therapists that I've had, some were children of immigrants and some weren't at all. Some looked more similar to me and some didn't look similar at all. I find that there is value in those experiences, but it certainly does help. And if for the person to have a lived experience that's similar to you, and if you feel like that is what's going to help you be more vulnerable and open up in a session, then that's what you should go for. Because I think for us as children of Desi immigrants, being vulnerable and kind of like airing out your dirty laundry is super frowned upon. We're very much told. Again, I think a lot of children of all immigrant cultures can relate to what we're saying here. And I keep saying that because I really feel that this episode isn't just for us and our people. It really is for other children of immigrants too. There's a certain layer of put on a happy face. Don't share to the world that you're struggling. Don't tell people that you have marital problems. People I think
Keep the issues inside the house.
Don't let it bleed into work. Definitely don't let it bleed to your social circle. I think a lot of people tout, this is just a fun little statistic that a lot of people like to say about, I think they usually say mostly for India, but it goes for India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. They say that the divorce rates are really low there. And the reason they tout that is they say, well, maybe arranged marriages are the way to go. And I would argue, I won't speak for you, that they're not necessarily more successful marriages. They're just not, it's looked down upon to get divorced.
Well, yeah, when religion is so heavily tied into the culture and the cultural aspect of how you live your life, how you raise your children, how you do things, how you live as a human.
Yeah.
It's frowned upon to divorce.
It doesn't look good. But that's also just societally, it looks like you failed.
Yeah.
So even, because we'll see that, in some of these countries, there are definitely others who are not. There could be some that are Christian, some Muslim, some Hindu. But as a culture, they really just don't divorce.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Catholics and those in Catholic cultures can also relate to that. So the religion is definitely a piece of it. But I think even without the religion, like the culture itself is very much high expectations about what looks good and successful. So that's kind of interesting. So I'm glad that your clients have you, because I think that seriously, it's something that I consider for myself. Like, would I want someone who looks like me? Is there any benefit that I can find from someone who has a different experience than me? As someone who's worked with business owners, I think that my clients not looking like me and being different ages and, different backgrounds, that's actually been really helpful to their learning.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with business, we're looking at expanding and scaling and growing and getting the knowledge from my brain and injecting into theirs. Whereas with therapy, it's different. I can see why you would want someone who is more similar to you, so that, because you're not the accomplishing in my world is like, let's make some money, let's book some clients. But in your world, the accomplishing looks like being understood.
Being understood, feeling like
safe.
you can, exactly, feeling like you can be yourself and understood by someone who truly does understand you.
There's a certain level of comfort.
Yes.
And in my world, the discomfort is good. It's like you just should be pushed out of your comfort zone.
Well,
yours maybe.
True, to a certain degree. Comfort is needed in order to build a therapeutic relationship, but then discomfort is needed when change
For the growth. And then you push your clients, I'm sure, out of their comfort zones when you need to.
Yes.
Because, well, they didn't come to have you be their best friend, just like people don't hire me necessarily to be their best friend. Could go that direction. They start to maybe see you that way as like a in that really close capacity, but we're here to get things done. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the code switching, okay? Because I know that Black Americans talk about this a lot, in the workplace, at home, and I don't see enough South Asian Americans talk about the code switching that we also do. Um, I'm curious if you have any experience to share, like anything memorable that comes up where you very much had to code switch between being very Bengali versus being having to be very American, or if you put on different appearances for the different audiences.
I really can't. Hold on, I'm trying to think. Do you have any?
Sure. Okay. So while you think of one, I will share one for myself. Is that I think there was just a lot of hiding. I think there was just a ton of just plain and simple. There was a ton of hiding, normal adolescent experiences that I saw my peers who are American were able to tell their parents. Okay, I'm going to a party, mom. Can I borrow some money? Or I'm going to a party, mom. Would you be able to pick me up? I think like some of them are going to be drinking. Or are you going to be drinking, Sally? Oh, yeah, maybe a little bit, mom. Like they could, even if it didn't go that far. The point is they could tell their mom or dad, hey, I'm going to be at this party, or hey, I'm going to this dance, or hey, I'm going to homecoming, or hey, I want to buy this clothing. Can get in that subject. Can you come with me to the mall to buy this super cute short booty short type of homecoming dress? And their parents were mostly okay with it. So I would say with me, it was a lot of hiding. And so our older sister, I'm going to try to get her into an episode. She's amazing, and she's done some pretty cool things that we'll talk about, and has been pretty instrumental in my life. So I definitely want to have her in a future episode. But what she will joke and say, half joke, half very serious, is that as we got to the youngest sibling, which is me, by the way, she's the middle sister, and we have an oldest sister as well. She will say that our parents were more strict with her and got less strict as we went on. So I will say that I didn't necessarily have to lie about going to a homecoming dance. I just didn't give extra details about what's happening at a homecoming dance. The grinding and the dancing, definitely they didn't know about that, right? They knew that boys were going to be there, but they thought that we were all just there as friends, maybe just dancing 6 feet away from each other. Whereas our oldest sister didn't even take the chance of saying that she's going there at all. So I would say it's the hiding, with what I was mentioning earlier about saying you have a partner. Even as an adult, it took me some time. I think the first time I ever told my parents I had a boyfriend, I think I was maybe 19 or 20, maybe is when I told them. And it went okay. I mean, it didn't go horrible, but I think in even more religious families, I would say our parents are rather religious, but even more religious families were even more strict. That probably wouldn't have gone very well. And that's exactly why there's this layer of not being close with your parents. And so for me, it was the main thing with code switching is just the hiding. Is that with my school friends who are American, I definitely wanted to show up and I wanted to wear booty shorts to school because maybe that was trending and that was cool. And so I would put that in. I would wear jeans leaving the house, but then I would go into the school bathroom and change so I can wear my shorts to fit in. And that wasn't fun. It would have been nice to just be able to be your full self with your parents, and that was just not allowed. So that I would say that's for me the biggest straddling, too much lying. About you?
That makes sense. I think thinking back to our childhood, I mean, really thinking about how Amwanabu, they made sure that all the basic needs were met.
Yeah.
They did the very best they could. The understanding of how we were feeling, what we were going through in school, as opposed to how, it's more
Did
so,
you eat?
yeah, did you
That
eat
was
lunch? Did you make good grades?
Right.
How, not how did that test make you feel? Did you study for it? It's more so, what did the test, what was the outcome of the test?
Or you have an
What
issue
was,
with a friend or something.
right. And so exactly. So it was less about the feelings aspect and more about the outcomes, the actions behind it. And really seeing is what they believed. So they saw what they wanted to see, and they saw, you know, good grades. They saw well dressed, well kept, respectful. And that's what they wanted to believe. But in our brains, that kind of put us in a place of, okay, if we step outside of this idea of what they think we are unworthy, or we are not, we're going to be seen as a particular, a negative light in our parents' eyes. And that's not what we wanted. We wanted to show them the most positive sides of us, and thinking that this other side, this more American side, this more assimilated side of us is negative or wrong.
Yeah.
And in some ways, in their brains and in their views, it clashes with the religion and the culture, and that is wrong. Letting go your religion and culture to assimilate and pick up things that are foreign to them.
To them, that's foreign. Exactly. Okay, so that brings me into the nice segue of the next subject, which is the 3 levels of Desihood, which when my sister and I were coming up with our notes for this episode, we came up with what we called 3 levels of Desihood. There's a 4th level, a bonus level, which we'll get to that. But the 3 levels of Desihood came because we were talking about a recent time we were visiting our parents a few months ago. And you just reminded me that it was Eid. For those of you who don't know what that is a religious Muslim holiday that is celebrated by most Muslim South Asians.
It was at the end of Ramadan, and my mom
just a month of fast day.
Yeah.
So you probably know that.
Yeah.
And so it was, nice. She made good food. Her husband was there as well. My parents essentially invited their new neighbors, and their new neighbors were from Bangladesh.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty cool. We're like, oh yeah, they told us ahead of time, oh, we have the neighbors over. So when you come over, they're there. Oh,
okay, cool.
So in my brain, I'm already code switching. Okay. So I'm like, oh great. So
what do you need to say?
Yes, there's an auntie and uncle. Are my boots showing too much? Or is this outfit okay? Are there too many holes? I don't even know what I was wearing at this point. So funnily enough, when we get in there, my parents are shuffling around in the kitchen as they do. They're kind of like cooking or doing whatever it is to prepare something. And so your husband, auntie, me, and you, we all kind of sit in the living room and try to be polite, talk to them. We thought it was going to be nothing beyond polite niceties in Bengali. There's okay, we got to put the Bengali on, which I think we both speak the language pretty decently.
Right.
So I wasn't necessarily worried about that. We just thought it'd be nice because I'm like, hi, what do you do for work?
Yeah. How are you? How do you like the neighborhood? As much Bengali as we could possibly say.
Yeah. But very surface.
And then translating for Andy,
yeah,
he doesn't speak Bengali.
Exactly.
That's what we thought.
Right. Now, when we did chat with them, we definitely got asked those questions too, but here was the kicker. They also spoke perfect English.
They recognized that we were born and raised here.
Immediately. They immediately recognized that. And the reason they recognize that is because they fall into the second level, or if we're looking at an inverted pyramid, okay, they're in the middle level. Okay, and I'll explain what that inverted pyramid looks like and why I put them in the middle. But they essentially told us that they were born in Bangladesh. They were in their 40s, if you will, right? 40s. Our parents are in their 60s and 70s. I think they were in their 40s, something like that. And I think they were open about sharing that too. They were born in Bangladesh, but they went to college here in the US. And so their jobs, their careers were very different than that of many immigrant parents. I think a lot of folks listening to this can relate to the fact that their parents may have been very accomplished in their home countries, dentist, doctor, lawyer, engineer, software developer, but unfortunately, the education diplomas don't carry over. So a lot of times the experience of an immigrant in America is that they're starting over. And so sometimes with the language barrier, they don't get to have those jobs again. Now with these auntie and uncle, which they didn't really feel like an auntie and uncle, they kind of felt like a peer. They were a dietitian and a software developer or finance or some, I don't know, some pretty cool jobs that you would, see from anyone who was educated here and went up high in their education, I guess.
Right. Gained their secondary education here, which gave them the upper hand. They got their English was refined. I mean, English is taught and learned in Bangladesh.
They had to really assimilate because they were in college with other Americans.
Right. Where they were still developing. They were coming to this country, still developing, trying to assimilate, trying to fit in. And then they grew up in that way. Whereas you just brought something up really important is when immigrants who establish themselves or at least build a master's level education in another country, just talked to Abu about this. Abu's law degree,
Very highly educated, my dad. Yeah.
coming to this country, it didn't, wasn't, the credits were not matched. And so all of the work, all of the time he spent on learning was for nothing.
Yeah.
It couldn't translate to something more, where he had this goal and aspiration of becoming a lawyer and fighting for his people, fighting for people who need help, and then also supporting his family so that they don't have to work as hard. He wasn't able to do that.
No,
He had to
because
start at the bottom again.
let's start right at the bottom, and we can get into an entire subject of just about our parents and the journey they went through to live the American dream. That's can be an entirely different episode, but yeah, definitely start at the bottom, and that was difficult. And so it was kind of like survival versus, okay, let me learn English and have the luxury of getting a tutor, going to these classes while I have a wife and 3 kids who are waiting on me to make money right now, and then study for the bar. And
Right.
then get passed. But there's a lot involved with that. So with someone who has like $0 coming to America, needing cash right now, learning English and starting back over to go the law school route was a luxury. And so he didn't have that. And, I think he made his own way in the world, and we're very grateful for that. He went the small business route, as many immigrants who live the American dream have done, which is, I know that so many of you guys can relate to your parents living that small business immigrant dream. So we're very proud of that. It's definitely what pushed me into business, for sure. It definitely inspired me. But like she said, they had those neighbors. They had the upper hand because they did their secondary education here. So they're kind of forced to assimilate. They weren't like, I'm gonna cling back to my culture. They clinged to it in some ways. Because they speak freely with my parents in Bengali, with our parents in Bengali, but with us, they really opted to speak in English for the most part. Not only because Andy was there and he wanted to be clued into the conversation too, but because they probably they felt comfortable doing so. And it's just very interesting. So the inverted triangle that we call of the 3 levels of Desihood is at the top is where we would put our parents, right? So the model the dice. At the top is really our parents, folks who maybe like yourself who are listening, your parents who came from another country and immigrated here. Most of their formative adult years were probably spent in that country. And then they came to the US to live that American dream.
Right.
And you were born as the first gen American.
Right. And the snapshot that they took from when the time that they left from whatever country they left from, our parents, Bangladesh, they took those values and culture, cultural norms at the time in the 1980s and brought that here. But when you're not seeing the progression of what it looks like in Bangladesh, here, you're stuck in the 1980s. You're stuck in the 1980s. It's frozen in time.
That's
so really thinking about, trying to balance what you know or what you stick with and holding on to that so tightly for your children to know the progression and the getting with the times doesn't really happen as much. So I definitely put them there at the top. Their concrete thinking, their views of the world had already been formed in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
So coming here, nothing's gonna, change their mind.
Yeah. And that's where the cultural clashes and the hiding that I mentioned earlier, why that had to happen. And you bringing that up is actually really interesting because my mom has some sisters, one sister in particular who is younger than her, a decent bit younger, at least about 10 years younger than her, who came to America maybe 5 years ago now, I guess, less than 10 years ago now. She's in her 50s. She's come from a different snapshot now, right? Like you said, that frozen in time snapshot. Our parents is the 80s. Bangladesh in the 80s probably was a little bit more traditional and buttoned up and conservative. That aunt of ours, she is quite liberal and she's very easygoing, and we can probably share anything with her, but you see that in her children too. They're very free and very honest with her, and not that they have enough energy to hush. There's a certain emotional
and vulnerability that her children can have with her.
Her snapshot is from 2015,
right?
Not 1980.
Yeah.
So just you saying that kind of made me think that out. Like, with our aunt, makes sense. Her snapshot of 2015 Bangladesh. Well, People are doing all sorts, it's just almost like here.
She would actually fall into that second
She almost
category
would. She almost
that the
she didn't
neighbor, auntie, and uncle fall into.
exactly, which she didn't even get educated here, but it's like you said, the snapshot of when you left the home country. So then, like I said, that auntie and uncle are in the middle, and then we are at the bottom. And at the bottom is those of us who are first gen American, who were born here but have immigrant parents. The bonus level, we were joking, is that is the children of first gen Americans. So even though that auntie and uncle, they're not necessarily first gen, they're kind of like one and a half. They're kind of in the middle, really. But what we noticed is that their son,
who also came along.
yes, he was there and he was very sweet. He was born here fully, of course, educated here as well. And he was doing like some college applications and things like that. They were freely talking to him about dating apps
in front of us.
and
Strangers they met for the first time.
they were asking us about dating app advice and what filters. And, they did say, well, we wanted him to date someone who's Muslim. And we thought that was interesting. But again, that's the holding on to maybe that part of the culture that's important for them. But they were like, please go on dating. Please date any girl. We just want her to be Muslim or convert to Islam or whatever. And so that's not a conversation we would have had perhaps at his age. I could definitely talk to my parents about dating apps now. I'm the only one that's not married. So you better believe we talk about dating apps here and there. And my mom definitely tells me to filter for certain things that she wants. But at 18, at his age, no, definitely would not talk
out of the question. Not even something we would even think was possible.
Certainly not. Certainly, maybe now, perhaps not at that age. So he has a certain level of privilege, which I was really jealous of. And I told you this. Her and I talked about is that I don't think he even realizes how lucky he is because he gets to have these parents who have such a rich cultural identity, just like ours do. Okay, just like ours do, and we're very appreciative of that. Food, culture, music, everything. But he also has the emotional closeness, like you said, that perhaps we didn't get. And our parents are working on it. They're getting better. And, with the therapy side of sister, she definitely helps move our parents along. You come at it differently. And I've definitely tried my best over the last decade or so to help assimilate them as well so that they understand, hey, we have complex emotions that maybe we want to talk to you about. And so they're getting there and they're better. But for this fourth level 18-year-old who was born here, he gets a certain privilege that maybe we just don't have. And so he doesn't even know how lucky he has it. But I'm happy for him because his experience in getting older and being able to run to his parents whenever he needs them is going to be very different. Even just that word, running to your parents, that was not it. Okay, I messed up. I'm going to run to my parents. No, do not call your parents.
Let's figure it out and fix it before.
Alone, quickly, very fast. You missed the deadline. Oh shit, don't tell your parents. You're drunk at a party and that you shouldn't be. Ooh, definitely don't call your parents. You had a bad breakup. So the longest, I definitely didn't tell my parents about it and stuff. And that's painful. You want to be able to talk to your mom or talk to your dad about things like that. So that's something that I think is a little depressing, but it's real. And that's where people like you come in. And that goes full circle back to what we were talking about earlier, is that maybe why they choose someone who looks like them, because they can say XYZ, whatever experience. And you're like, yeah, I know. No need to explain it more because I get it.
Yeah.
We've already been told not to be vulnerable. So with you, they get to be vulnerable in a way without over explaining. And that makes it easier because it's already not easy for us to open up. For all of us, definitely as millennials. We've been traumatized as a generation. But when you're a millennial who comes from an immigrant household, it's even scarier to open up to a stranger on Zoom.
Without feeling like you're going to be reprimanded or judged by someone who looks like you, you're finally able to do it in a place that feels safe, with a person that feels safe, and finally being able to get to root causes of challenges you've been experiencing your whole life, and trying to figure out the tools you need to kind of rebuild and repair things with your parents or things with the people in your life that you believe to be there for you and want to be there to support you.
What I'll tie up on that piece is what I think is very interesting. You mentioned earlier that our parents very much looked at our accomplishments and if we were well. And so I think the angle there with therapy too, for those of us who are seeking it out, whether we're seeking out someone who looks like us or not, is that there's a certain level of performance in that we're not supposed to look weak. We're not supposed to look like we're messing up. We're supposed to put on a very specific face. So even sometimes choosing someone who has that lived experience as you can almost like drop your shoulders and think, I don't have to be fake for this person.
Right.
I
I
don't
don't
have
have to straddle the two identities.
again,
With another person that I'm trying to be vulnerable with. I'm not being judged by the person who's
no,
speaking with me about my issues, even though they may have some level of familiarity that with me. They don't have to look the same or be of the same background, but like I can finally open up to somebody and not be judged.
and not feel like a failure.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of us, our parents have said that, uh, needing help isn't a good thing. And I think that we see that sometimes in our parents is that they also have done things alone a lot of the time. Maybe they reach out to community, perhaps, but even then, how much do you tell community so that they don't know you're struggling too much, whether it's
Right.
financially or in a relationship or what have you? It's been ingrained in us of like, do everything yourself. So even as Desi kids reaching out for therapy, give yourself a pat on the back. You're already beating something in your head that tells you that getting help equals failure. You're already rejecting that notion by getting help. And so we're proud of you if you're doing that and you are actively saying, I want help and I know it doesn't make me look weak, but I do choose to hire someone who looks similar to me so that I don't have to put on a mask and put on a show. And that's totally understandable and that's totally okay. Okay. Like for myself, I personally would probably prefer a therapist who's neurodivergent in some because for me what I have and enjoy talking about in therapy is strategies around battling the ADHD and maximizing it and using it as a superpower and sometimes explaining the executive dysfunction to someone who has absolutely no idea beyond the surface level textbook understanding of it, no lived experience of it. It does sound lazy. I definitely talk to family members or friends, peers, and even mentors. Which is kind of disappointing, but who have who have heard me describe my ADHD issues, struggles, and have essentially said, "Grow up." So
Right.
so
Not really understanding
or
you.
we all have that.
Yeah.
So we don't.
That's within your control or whatever I'm sure they say.
Just grow up or just suck it up or it's really not as bad as you think. It's really all in your head.
It's like the same thing. Tell your parent. Why can't you just tell your
Tell
parent?
just tell them you're doing
Yeah.
something.
It's like that if it was that easy, we would
We would have already done that.
have done it and we wouldn't be telling you.
We wouldn't be in therapy, damn it. We would not have the issues that we're coming to you for today. Yeah, I've definitely had a therapist before who looked absolutely nothing like me from race to age to whatever. I think the only thing we have in common was gender, but very, very, very different. Just full transparency. She was an older, a decently bit older white woman. And I told you about her, while she was very, very nice, nothing wrong with her as a person, she definitely didn't understand why I was having the issues I was having in my relationship, how that was sort of mirroring some things I saw in childhood. It didn't really make sense to her. And you could see the confusion on her face. And maybe the fascination you were talking about earlier. This is interesting.
Right.
But
I've never heard of this.
I've never heard of it. Yeah. It's like,
Tell me more. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to tell you more. Or I do, but
yeah.
we're talking more about the story as opposed to the reason why the story is even there.
And that's why a lot of times with her in particular, nice woman, nothing against her. I definitely was masking a lot and putting on a very performative face of like, let me just get through whatever it is I need to tell this lady. And then, all right, like go back to my problems after. It's like, but now I didn't really solve anything. So, I think those of you listening maybe have felt similar as you have gone through some different therapists. Choosing one that makes sense for you, whether the relatability is on race and culture, or if it's based on neurodivergence, which is more of an importance for me. I will say there's a sense that there's too much relatability can be an issue. We definitely enjoyed the relatability with my parents, neighbors, that auntie and uncle, which didn't feel like an auntie and uncle. But you have had an experience where there was too much relatability where, in the medical sense with a doctor, and I want you to share that with them where maybe that's sometimes not a good thing, that choosing a specialist based on your culture, sometimes doesn't help you. You want to share what happened?
Yes, of course, was a time in which my parents or my mom wanted me to go to a doctor.
How old were you?
I think I was about 18 or 19. I was gaining some weight during college.
As we all do.
As we all do, freshman 15, I
Freshman
believe.
20, freshman 15, whatever.
And she wanted me to talk to somebody about it. And I think at the time we were switching primary care physicians. And my mom had found someone who was Bangladeshi.
Oh, she was an Indian?
No,
Oh,
she
she
was
was
Bangladeshi.
okay.
And it was really, like, on paper, I was like, wow, this is really cool, Mom. Like, this is great. Thank you so much. Like, let's go see. I'll be able to connect with her.
It's probably more
I'll be
comfortable for her. That's
Right.
probably why our mom did it.
Right.
She's probably like, we can bully her into losing weight.
I mean, maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
Or maybe it was, like she'll be more open. I don't know what my mom's intention was, or
Communication. Yeah.
I can talk to this doctor easier without having to think in my head what I'm going to say, in Bengali to English, then say it out loud, then process it all and coming back in my brain of what I understand.
Yeah.
My mom didn't want to have to do that.
She chose the doctor too, right?
I believe she did. She found this
That's
one.
probably why.
And, the problem with that is that she almost cut too many corners in order to tell me what I needed to hear without the cushioning that was needed, without the bedside manners that sometimes don't exist with doctors anyway, but they really don't exist.
Oh, we're basically the same. We're the same people, so
It's okay. I'm going to tell you straight without caring about your feelings. What are feelings? To be honest.
yeah.
So, getting to the point of why I needed to lose weight, getting to the point of if you don't, if you gain 1 more pound, I'm going to have to put you on hypertension medicine, which, I'm not sure if it was right. I'm not sure if it was a hyperbole to make a point, because just the Bengali language is beautifully poetic,
but can be
and very hyperbolic at the same time in order to describe the depth of the feeling. And I get that. It's funny. They don't care about the feelings, but the depth of the feeling is poetic.
If it's right the point home, they'll do it.
Yes. So, very explicit, direct, to the point, and I can very much tell that she could only get away with saying some of those things without caring about my feelings and how they impacted them, because I was Bangladesh.
Yeah, same culture.
And so, that probably helped her in getting her point across, but it
She
really
could say what
did
she
not.
wanted to say.
Right. She can say, whereas if it was a white American girl, 18, 19 years old, maybe she would cushion it more. Maybe she would say things
with
in a
her white
different
mom
way.
there, right there.
With her, exactly.
Yeah, she definitely would not say that shit.
Like,
let me not lose my license.
Right. I just, it was eye-opening for me, because I was like, wow, this is not what I pictured or experienced or thought would happen.
So sad.
Yes, I do need to lose weight.
But damn, bitch.
But yeah, seriously, never going back to you again.
Yeah.
And that turned me off to to care about those things, or to find relatability in that way. I think that's really the difference between, the medical world and being treated as a patient versus the therapy counseling world and being treated as a client. They're very different in the way you approach things, how many manners, bedside manners, unconditional positive regard you have for the person that you're working with and supporting. So definitely, change that direction of who I was looking for, help and support and health in general. But as I've gotten older, being understood became more important to me. Understanding myself became more important to me. And in order to understand myself, I want the person I'm talking to understand me up to a certain level, degree too.
I think that's probably why you're also more careful, and not careful, but why you're even more considerate with those clients of yours, I assume, that came to you because they were like, just like you were wide-eyed and excited to meet that doctor, like, oh, maybe she'll kind of get me. She'll be like maybe like a second mom, but maybe nicer, hopefully, and can give me all the medical knowledge. And then wasn't, maybe, they come to you and they're like, oh, she'll just get it. And so I believe that you would probably handle that with much more care. Unfortunately, given because you had that situation happen to you. And what's funny is that doctor probably falls into like the middle level of the Desi level, right? Because she obviously gets it. Yeah, of course.
She has
She has a doctorate, so obviously she had to do some schooling here, if not all of the schooling. Right. Maybe she redid it, whatever. But the point is, I think for her, she was like, I can just lower she's
the
lowering her
mask. The mask.
No, really, and then she just went straight, cut to the chase what she wanted to tell. Whereas, which brought her closer to the Bengali-ness, right? Of like, because our culture is very blunt about your appearance. And if you've gained weight, you will be told. If you're breaking out and you've got a pimple that you can see from a mile away and you have it on your forehead, they'll make sure you know.
If you tanned over the summer, you went to the beach and you got dark, you will know why and how much you've darkened over the year and how you need to stay out of the sun and all that.
Children of immigrants I know can relate to that one. I definitely hear that from so many cultures. Like, why are you so dark? I've definitely heard that a lot. So we can do an entirely different episode on that. But yeah, so she got to lower her veil in a sense. Our mom got to lower maybe her veil in a sense. And yours just did not get lowered. You were like,
went back.
You went back. I was
like, all right, the walls are going back up.
So, and I wonder if in some sense maybe you can shed some light on this, if it made you feel more isolated from the culture when that situation happened.
When those situations happen, it makes you, it reaffirms your idea in your head of, oh, yep, my parents are not,
we're different.
We're different. My parents are not going to understand where I'm coming from. They're not going
look
to
out for your emotional
or emotional well-being.
Yeah.
Really. I'm just going to keep that to myself because my needs are not being met in this moment and I can't see it being met in the future. So let me just keep it to myself.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think there's a certain level of let's be real, like a medical professional does have to be honest.
Oh, of course.
They definitely do. And so if my future hypothetical children are being told like, hey, like you're obese, like I hope that the doctor is saying that out of pure honesty. But if it ever borders into like an insult for the sake of them lowering their veil, that doctor's going to catch some pains. I'm going to be pretty pissed for my future hypothetical children. But that's because I would have their emotional well-being in mind. But that's because I'm on that bottom level of that inverted triangle, right? Like so many of you who are listening probably are. So even though that doctor experience was kind of sad and depressing, and shaped you in ways that have made you who you are today, we can be grateful. We can turn this around and end on some key takeaways here. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Zanna, to sort of give your key takeaways that you want, as well as ways they can reach out to you. If they're interested in either working with you or asking you questions or maybe even picking your brain or learning more about your work.
Zach, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. I do want to say that one of the major takeaways is despite feeling like you cannot open up to, if you're in our shoes, not being able to open up to your parents, not being able to be vulnerable, and truly show them a side of you that you fear that they will reject, or if you feel like you won't be accepted, to keep trying, keep searching, keep trying with them, keep trying to help them understand where you're coming from and meet them in the middle because they are from a different generation, from a different society, from a different set of cultures and norms that we really lived experience wise, we don't know what that is like. So understanding that they'll have that background and perspective makes sense. It's definitely something to keep in mind, but that the experiences that you have, to not let them weigh you down, to never truly find someone to connect with or to feel supported by. There is, one of the many things that came out of COVID is the opportunities to still stay connected, to still find something that you're looking for, to find that, if it is the filters, if it is certain factors or attributes that you're looking for in a person to speak to your mental health about, you can find those things. There are ways, there are search engines, there are ways to find what you're looking for, not to give up and not to feel like you're not understood. There's going to be someone out there who will understand you.
And so how can folks listening connect with you if they're interested in learning more about your work or anything any research you're doing right now, what you're up to, or if they want to work with you. What's the best way for them to reach you?
Yes. Okay. The best way for you to reach me is my Psychology Today page. If you search my name, you will find me. My email address and ways to contact me are on there, so you're more than welcome to do that. I'm a resident. I have a resident license, so I'm able to practice in the state of Virginia, whether in person or via telehealth. And really just recognizing that, there are ways to still connect. There are ways you can be vulnerable. You can reach out and find what you're looking for. All you have to do is take that chance and not be weighed down by the times in which you're not understood.
That's really good. I will say that my key takeaway is, funnily enough, so similar to hers. I mean, obviously you could tell we're sisters, so we're going to think similar in some ways, but also interestingly different in other ways. My key takeaway is very similar to hers in that you really shouldn't ever give up. It is definitely difficult work if you have parents like ours, whether from the same culture or maybe a similar one. If your parents are immigrants, there is a certain level of course, the culture barrier, but there is the language barrier, and there's the mental health barrier, and the the knowledge barrier, and the education barrier. There are emotional intelligence barrier. There are so many barriers, and yes, that does make it harder to have that conversation of like, hey, please see me, please understand me. I just want to connect with you, in ways that maybe others don't have to try as hard. But don't give up. Don't ever give up if that relationship is important to you. Try your best to see it from a place of compassion. And that has, for all three of us, like we said, we do have an older sister, that has been a different journey for all of us. I think that in my family, I kind of started that journey first. And I've definitely seen, especially my sister here, was really taken her own twist on how to come into that acceptance herself. So how can I help them understand me better? How can I help them understand themselves better? It's work. Like, let's not make any mistake. It is work. And should any child have to do that? No, but it's not going to be any different if you have a parent who, just maybe just not emotionally intelligent. Maybe your parent is American, is educated here, if they did grow up here. There's other ways that folks who are listening who aren't South Asian can probably still relate. There is a lot of immense work involved sometimes in catching your parents up to speed with your needs. But what I'll add to that takeaway that is similar to yours is that it's okay to set boundaries. It's something that I took quite a bit of time in my 20s to realize, is that I want a better relationship with my parents. So that will take work, of course, and that will be tough on my part. But to set boundaries and be okay with sometimes it not being okay, to be okay with knowing that sometimes they won't understand you, and knowing that there are limitations. And something I talk about, some of you guys have seen my relationship content that I put out sometimes, and I have something coming up soon where I talk about within romantic relationships. Sometimes we have we're wanting someone to give us level 4, but their absolute capacity is maybe level 2 in one particular area. That doesn't make them a bad person. It just means that like all their experiences of life that has shaped them to be that person today is capped at a 2 in that area.
Mhm.
And so it's the same thing with your parents. If they're immigrant parents, in certain areas they're capped, and they're a lot older than us. So they're literally just their neuroplasticity. It's just different. It just is so much different than yours. So be patient, be understanding,
Help build the bridge between where you are and where they are, and
and where you want both of you guys to be.
100%. I think if anything, if maybe emotional intelligence may not be rooted in everybody's DNA, but resilience is rooted in our DNA. And that's something that we can use to build this bridge.
Yeah, it can always be fixed. I think a lot of folks listening, you might think, okay, my parents are X age, I'm this age. There's no way that it could ever be repaired. And I think you see it in your work. I mean, you've had probably far more difficult experiences with kids who have had far more trying times than even what we have. We didn't have the easiest childhood ever, but I'm sure you've seen clients who have had even more difficult and trying circumstances, and even they persevere. Even they prove to be resilient. So you're never too old. You're never too uneducated. You're never too inexperienced. to start changing the relationship with your parents, if that is one that you wish to change. If you wish to change it, you can change it. It's just going to take work and it's going to take patience. So I guess we'll leave them with that. For those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more about what my sister does and where she's at in her journey in residency, you can, like she said, check her out on Psychology Today and search her up. Don't follow her on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram if you haven't already.
Follow her.
And make sure you're following the Thriving podcast page as well. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.